Hey, hi. Very good morning and good evening, everyone. Welcome back. So last session, we were discussing about some of the commands in Linux administration. So those particular ones were, we talked about how do you check the process by using ps command. Okay. And then after that, we have talked about a kill command to use to kill the process. By the way, it's like removing the process or just ending the process inside your operating system. And after that, we talked about is a sudo as a privilege escalation. So any administrative work you want to do, normal user may not be able to do that. So some privileges is expected. So that's where sudo will come into picture. So sudo is what we have discussed. So how to use sudo. And after that, the package management is a major one we talked about. So which is sudo DNF command, or just sudo is a prefix. Just DNF is the actual command. And the DNF, by the way, so DNF, we talked about different options. So majorly you need to think about list and as well as install. Okay, these are the two major commands options that we use in DNF. And also here we talked about how this DNF is actually going to the internet and fetching the packages. There is a reference in a repo file in etc m.repos.d location, and using that reference is actually using it. Now the next one is yeah, until here we have discussed in yesterday's session, by the way. Let's continue. And yesterday machine, I have terminated that particular machine. So I'll go and launch that particular machine quickly. So I'm going to go to instances, launch instance, search for DevOps-practice and hit enter. Community MIs. You will see RHL9. Proceed without a key pair. Launch instance. And here you have a killer Coda link. Go here. And here you have admin topics. Yeah. So the next one is going to be a service management. So this is also an important task for us because end of the day, the server is meant for services, to run the services. Okay. You have a server means you may be running some service on inside that. And to manage them, you have a service management. Now, until so far, the commands which you executed on the command line, maybe like, let's say ls command, cat command, these are all the commands which is actually tend to end, by the way. So that means those are ending. Those will end, maybe taking little time, maybe taking a 30 seconds, 1 minute or 1 second, does not really matter, but those are ending. But now you're going to get some commands, okay, which runs as a service, which you need to run 24/7. If you want to run a command that is 24/7, you can't actually just run on the terminal. Okay. So you should ask the system to run it 24/7. Okay. Now when you give ps-e, we have seen many process out there, right? So those particular process, okay, so some of the process which are running 24/7. So which you didn't start it, right? So that's where those particular process are called as services. Okay. And to manage those particular services, by the way, we require service management. And we are going to use a service management software called as systemd, or basically an operating system is actually having is systemd. We're going to use that. So let's get onto your machine. I'm inside the machine. Now, let me install some software. Yesterday, we were installing some web servers, sudo. We are going to use a DNF install engines because unless I install some software, I can't manage the service, by the way. So let's install that. All right. So I just installed the Nginx service. Now, yeah, I just wanted to, if you want to list down all the services, you can do this. So that's okay. But now I installed a software called as Nginx. So now I can start checking the status of that particular service. Now, how do you know that, so Nginx is a software that has a service? You will come to know. Okay. So when you actually started dealing with the software and things like that, you will come to know. For an example, uh, so MongoDB, okay, as an example, like install, if you say, if you go to the documentation, okay, so here, let's say community edition on Red Hat. Now, if you just go with the process, by the way, so they're going to ask you to use a repo file, okay, to install it. You install it, okay. After installing the package, you're going to run the MongoDB edition, community edition, by the way. So they're explaining everything, and after that, if you just come bit down, okay, how do you run it and all? So different options they're telling. So if you just come bit down, so how do you start your thing? So you can use systemd.ctl to start it. So they're telling, okay, this is how you start your service. You will come to know, okay. So the software which are installing, you will not blindly install it, okay. You will come to know what is it, and based on that, you will come to know what is its service names, okay. All those particular things, you'll slowly come to know. Like when you know the software, you will come to know about it. All right. So that's where, so this Nginx is having some service, and that's where we go for sudo systemctl status Nginx. So now you can see this is actually loaded, but it is inactive. If you don't remember the service name, I want to list down all the services, then you can use this command. Sudo systemctl list -units -t service. You will get all the things. Rather than remembering this command and list it down, I think remembering the service name is easy. Okay, so that is fine. So systemctl status Nginx. And to start this particular service, so sudo systemctl start Nginx. So we're going to use start Nginx. Now, after starting, you can go and check the status whether it is started or not. So you can go here and check it out. So it is active and running, it's showing green. It is coming. So you can press Q to come out actually. So here you have to press Q because it is not giving you the prompt. So you press Q and then you get the prompt. Right. Now to stop a service, so sudo systemctl sudo systemctl stop Nginx, and you can check the status once again. So now it is inactive. Okay. So sometimes you need to restart the services as well. Okay, so systemctl restart also is there. So rather than start and stop, you can also go for restart as well. It will do the start and stop. All right. Now if I go for the status, so now you can see this, it is okay. So this is the one. Now, whereas assume if a case, if you assume if a case that machine is rebooted, then you want to start this service automatically. Now, Nginx is running, right? Okay. Let me reboot a machine. So there is a command called as a reboot. If I type this command, the system is going to get rebooted. Okay. Let it reboot. So you will lose the connection. Server is going down automatically, and let it come back. When it is coming back, it will not start the service automatically. Because, okay, so here there's an option which is called as a disabled. So you can see this service is disabled. So that means it is not actually going to start at the time of reboot. So you need to enable it so that you don't need to bother about starting the services again when the machine got rebooted, whatever the reason it is. So you need to start the services automatically. So that's where we will enable this. Now for that, the command we have is systemctl enable nginx. And if you enable, so there you will see that as enable. Machine is still coming. Yep. And so now sudo systemctl status nginx, it is not running. Okay. So now let's say enable nginx and you use status nginx. So now it is enabled so that even after the reboot also the machine system service will start automatically. You no need to come and start. Now at this point of time, it was disabled when it was started. I have to come and start it. Let's do a reboot one more time. So you will see that practically. Okay. Now sudo systemctl status nginx. And you can see this, it is enabled. Yeah. So that is anyhow somehow kind of hung actually. That's okay. Now you can see this. So systemctl nginx. So the server just got started and you got it as enabled and you're getting it. Right. So this is how you're going to manage your services inside your system. And going forward, when you actually get onto a project, you will get a requirement of creating your own services. Now, maybe in Nginx software you installed, you're getting everything here, by the way. But I mean, everything in the sense like, you're directly running systemctl status Nginx. But later, actually, when the projects, you have to create the services. Okay, how to create a services and all, you will see that. But for now, this is fine. Any questions on this?
Yeah, hi Raghu.
Yeah.
For this one pseudo systemctl stays nginx, we are connecting to the service. This one we are using this command. Why
To manage the services, we are using systemctl.
to
Windows
manage?
also you have a services button. So it's all Windows is a UI by the way. So there you open UI and you right click start, you right click stop, you will do by the way. This is what how you do in Windows. So Linux is a command line. So we are dealing with a command and the command is systemctl.
It will start and stop the
Yeah,
services.
yeah. Now let's
We
say
will follow this one or Windows one.
Windows we don't follow.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right. So moving to the next one, so which is the next we have user management, and a very important one again. Okay, so we use our servers to run the web applications, by the way. So we already set the context, right? So we actually talked about, so where is, okay, the roles and responsibilities is all the, okay, all the tasks to be performed with automation, infrastructure management with IAC, app smooth releases with CI/CD. Okay, so and also beneath down to that, actually we talked about some application will be accessed by the user. Okay, some with some .com. Okay, so somewhere we are going to run the application on the server. Okay, now the software which are running. Okay, we're talking about now. Let's say Nginx is one software. Nginx we just installed it. It's a web server. If you're getting web pages means that means a web server. The web pages whatever you see over here, you're getting that means that's a web server. Nginx is one of it. Okay. Now some web server is running over here for an example. Okay. Now, when these services are running, okay, we use our servers to run the web applications. So this application is going to be a process in the system. Now you started the service, right? Now you give ps hyphen ef for Nginx. You will see some Nginx process. Okay, Nginx process. And these processes should be run as a normal user rather than a root user for security best practices. You shouldn't run the things as a root user. You should always run as a normal user. Okay, and to run our applications as a normal user, we need to know how to add a user, okay, so that we can run our application, by the way, in the operating system. And in certain organizations, you don't need to really create a user locally as well. So these users also called as functional users, which is also created in the single sign-ons. Now I was talking about single sign-on concept, right? Maybe yesterday or day before yesterday, I was talking, when you log into a systems, by the way, you don't use a keys, by the way, I was explaining, right? So you'll use a username and password, and that username and password is going to be, so is a common for many applications, including Linux servers. Okay, that is what we talked about. And that's what we talked about. And that is where, okay, so even the application user, whatever you created, is also going to be some functional user in the centralized single sign-on, but that is called as functional user. Okay, so that will be exclusively declared as functional user. I mean, this user cannot log in. Okay, I mean, this user will not have a login username and password, just a user, by the way, in the system, so that you can run the applications. Or some organizations, they'll tell that, so functional users, we don't maintain central, you maintain local. That means on the server side only, you need to create the user. Okay, so yeah, let's taking the second scenario, by the way. So functional users to be maintained local, and I'm just going to create a user inside the system. I should know about how to create a user inside the system. So that's where, okay, we are going to see now how to add a user. Very simple, by the way. So it's a user add sample. In fact, it's not a user add sample, because user add, you can't do that. You will not have privilege. Okay, user add, like let's say sample, you will not have privilege. So permission denied, you have to use a sudo. All right, so sudo. Now the user has been added. It did not give any information that user added or something like that. Let's check it out whether the user is added or not. An ID command can help you. So simply go with the ID sample. You can see that a user has been created, by the way. That's it. Now, I was talking about creating a services manually, right? I will create a services manually is what I was mentioning. So when I go into a project, we'll get a requirement of creating the services manually. We'll talk about how to create the services manually. Okay. So that time we'll add a user and we'll use the user to run the service. How to do that, we'll see it again. All right. Now this is how we are going to do that. Now the above command shows some number, also the user ID of the system. So that our user ID of the user, by the way, in the system. Now ID sample user is having 1002. That is what it is telling. Okay. So usually for application users also, I mean, we call them as a functional user, will not have passwords for security standards of CIS benchmark within the organizations. There is something called a CIS benchmark. Okay. Now any organization, okay, so who is thinking seriously running their business, by the way, so they have to follow certain standards of the servers, especially, by the way. So the CIS benchmark will come into picture. Okay. So everyone across the globe follows these standards. It's a Center for Internet Security. So they offer, how to harden the things, or many things, by the way. And we're talking about, let's say, operating systems. If you go to the operating system, you will see we're dealing with a Linux operating system and different Linux operating systems that tell. Okay. So we are using Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So this is the one. You will have a benchmark, by the way. These are free. You can download it. So they'll tell you a lot of. So you can just enter the details so that you can get those particular things. Maybe I'm just having a link. So maybe this is for eighth one. Okay, that is okay. This is RHL 8 one, doesn't matter. So we're not anyhow not going to run the things. So, but still they're going to tell you many things. So you see this? These are all the things that you need to configure. Okay, before using a machine, by the way. Before using a machine, you should consider using about all these particular options to consider this is a secure machine. Okay, so and most of these particular things has been already done in the image which we are using, by the way. So RHL 9 DevOps practice. So this image is a CS image only. Okay, so many of the things is already been considered and set up. Okay, even in fact I was not doing. I was actually using some other image in the Amazon. Okay, to build my image. So they're already doing the CS benchmarking. And offering it for free. I am taking it and just doing little mixing the things or customizing the things for our requirement, very basic things. Okay, so CS is very important, so just keep this particular point in mind. Okay, if you want to talk about any standard things that what you're doing in your organization, one of the things that you should must and talk about is, okay, so we do the CS images. Okay, or CS benchmarking we do. That's what we need to clearly tell. So this is 8 1, 9 1, you can just anyhow, you go here and download it. Okay, so this is how we are going to have the, so now as per the CS benchmark standards, by the way, if you have any functional users, you should not have any password. So that means sample user, now, we can set a password. Now, if everyone, now let's say there are 10 engineers in the organization, if 10 engineers is actually logging in, okay, if 10 engineers is logging into the system with the same username and password, end of the day, if someone has done something wrong, how do you track it? You can't track it, right? So that's a challenge. So that's where common users will never have a passwords. Not a good practice. Okay. We are also not going to set the password for that particular user. Anyhow, it is a local user. We'll just use that particular user only to run the applications. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, okay, so deal with some script, by the way. So this script is actually just going to run some softwares inside the system, which is well-known softwares. And maybe the first one you'll not be able to do that. The second one and third one you can see. I just want to show you that, if you install any software in the internet, okay, so those particular softwares from the internet, in the sense like, so well-known softwares. Now, Tomcat is one of the well-known software. MariaDB, which is MySQL, is a well-known software. Okay. Uh, if you run such softwares, so you can see them, those are running the ps-ef pipe grep for Tomcat. You can see this Tomcat process is running. It's a one single process, but this is running with a Tomcat user. Okay. So these guys are following standards. That's what you need to understand. So now let's say MySQL or something like that. You can give, or Maria also is fine. So now you can see this Maria's software, you're running with some user called as MySQL. Okay. So this is how we are going to deal with this is how you are going to deal with the uh, okay, like process associating to a particular user. End of the day, how it will be done is very simple, by the way. So there will be some configurations like how what service to start. I mean, when you start the service, what command to run, what user to run, everything will be there. Okay. So for an example, if I go for systemd service file, so if I just go with something like that. Now, if I just go with, so service file, by the way, we had to write some files in the system, by the way, you had to write like this. But however, when you actually write it, so you have to specify maybe the username. So the username will be, okay, so something set like this. Think, yeah. Like this. So now when you have some service, so you're just simply starting it as like this. But if you start like this as, it will run it as a root user. But that's what we're talking about. We shouldn't do that. And that's where we are going to, so you're going to have the user like this, which user to run, which group to run. Usually you will give user is equal to something. Now when you give that, then it is going to run that particular one as a that particular user. So we are going to create a user, we're going to specify this. Now shall we check it out, this this Maria software, how he is getting MySQL? Yes, you can able to get it. So cat slash etc systemd system. So all the files you'll find out here. For an example, maybe let's try to do this. Windows systemctl enable MariaDB. So now you can see this. This is a service file name coming in. You can cat this. Now this guy is actually writing a very big. Okay, so MariaDB file or service file, by the way. Now here he is telling that, okay, when you start the service, by the way, so run with a user called as MySQL. It's clearly told here. The same thing happens with Tomcat also. If you try to take a look, so it's actually coming from here. So now if I take a look, so now you can see this actually, okay, I think here it is mentioned it as user is equal to Tomcat. Now it is making sense. Okay, so why you add a user and how do you run that particular service? It's a mapping. Somewhere the configuration is a mapping. Like the same way, so in the project when you go in, so we had to create our own services, and that is where then okay you require. So that is where you are going to require. Okay, we're going to run as a user. That's where we require how to know how to add a user, and that's where this user add command is what we are talking about. Right? Does it sounds clear? Any questions on this?
Hi Raghu. So when you were explaining about benchmarks or benchmarking, your screen got frozen a bit. So can you explain again, like what are benchmarks and why it is important, especially in Linux?
Security benchmarking. Okay. So it's basically like, how you make sure your server is, see, because when you install an operating system, you get a bare minimum operating system. So it's a generic operating system. They won't customize anything as per the standard practice. It is your choice as per your requirement. You have to, you have to harden it, by the way. All right. So that's where the CS benchmarking is one of the widely used benchmarking method for the Linux operating systems. So people use that widely. And they offer a document, by the way. So CIS offers a benchmarking steps for every operating system.
Okay, so it's only for Linux, or CIS offers for even for Windows also it might be there, right? I never checked it.
I also never checked it. I'm not a Windows guy. But it's a question. So let's check it out. You're dealing for operating systems. Even for Windows, it is there.
Okay, Windows desktop and server. Understood.
Yeah.
Um, Hi, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, Raghu, you said the services needs to be created, like, so, I mean, I'm little bit not clear about that because Nginx is a service, Tomcat is a service by a user. I mean, you need to create a user to be associated with that service, or you completely need to create a service you're talking about.
So far, actually, you're installing a services offered by a vendor, by the way. Okay. So that means Nginx is a software which is offered by Nginx vendor. You're directly installing it. Tomcat is a service offered by Tomcat vendor. You're directly installing it. So that's where when you're installing, by the way, so the installation steps, they'll add user, they'll create the service files. All these things is a step by step they will do, by the way. But however, going forward, by the way, we are going to run our web application, which is developed software for our in-house, by the way, which is developed software in-house. That means if I'm actually want to install that particular software inside the system, I have to create a user, I have to create a service file, and then I have to update all these particular things.
Okay, so DevOps engineer's job is that they need to create a service.
We need to run
Yes.
we need to run the web application. That's a business.
Okay.
So for doing that, what all is needed, we have to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Not able to hear your sound. Moving on.
Yes, Raghu. So we're coming back to the tutorial over here. There is this command curl -s https.
Don't bother.
Uh,
Some of them are simulations. Don't bother. For now, don't bother.
no, no, that is fine. I just want to understand like what exactly that particular command is doing.
What curl command do? We already talked about, right?
Okay. Curl is
Browser.
pulling, yeah, it's a browser command which extracts data from the particular URL.
Yeah. That's it. This is what it is doing.
And that is pipelined into sudo bash.
Right. It is being run, by the way. That's what I was mentioning. Don't bother about it at this point of time. So when we actually talk about shell scripting topic, you will understand this. Until then, don't bother. That is not the one I am explaining here. The
Okay.
dimension you have to look is completely different. Don't bother about it. That's only for simulation purpose. just to make my life easy, I was just writing some script and running, which I already done yesterday also, right? PS, you didn't ask on the PS side. So PS also, we had the same approach I have done at least. So if you just seen this, so here also I was doing the same thing. Okay, don't bother. That's not the dimension like I mentioned. So you will come to know. Don't worry.
No, okay.
Any other questions? All right. So the next one, the next topic we're going to talk about here is the user management is done, right? So the next one is the permission management, by the way. Yeah. So the permission management is also a crucial task, by the way. So because, when you actually go on to create an application, okay, we just talked about, so the service should run by a particular user, okay? And also the files associated in the operating system is also supposed to be set by that particular user only. We are supposed to set with that particular user only. So that is the idea of our talking about permission management, by the way, for our requirement. All right. So when you have some files in the operating system which to run the web applications, by the way, so or any applications, in fact, not only the web, behind the web also and applications. So those particular applications, when you actually run the software, okay, the software to be run by a particular user and the files associated to that particular software also associated to the same user. Okay, from that context, okay, permission management is important for us. Okay. Now, when you actually try to create a new file, by the way, so for an example, so touch sample, okay. Now ls-l of this particular directory, you see that the sample, the owner of the file, I'm getting it as ec2-user, and the group owner I'm getting is ec2-user. So the sample, I created this particular software. Now I am ec2-user. I also have a group called as ec2-user. And automatically that permissions of my username and my group is being associated to this particular user. That's okay. That's default. So now if I were to, so change the ownership of this particular file to sample user, for an example, then how do you do that? Okay, so then how do you do that is, so sudo change the ownership. Okay, change the ownership to the sample user and the file name is sample. Okay, maybe it's confusing. So touch file.txt. So that's where you will not have the confusion. Now file.txt. Now ls-l, let's remove rm sample as well. Now ls-l, so you can see this, it has been running as, or it's been created as ec2-user, but it's been changed to sample user. The same way you wanted to change the group also, you can change that. So chgrp, change the command with grp, and you're having sample and then file.txt. Okay, so ls-l. So you can see this file.txt. So now you can see this sample and sample. Now chown command is to change the ownership, chgrp to change the group, by the way. If you're doing the same thing with a file for a directory, by the way, you're going to use -r option, capital R, to change for a directory. Now the whole files inside that particular directory will be changed. Okay. Now once again, so let's say I'll go with touch demo.txt and ls-l. It will come for that with that particular user. Now sudo chown to sample demo.txt. Now I know that I need to change both the owner and group. So then chow command will help you in one shot also. Now chown sample : that means the username : group to that particular file. In a one shot also you can do that. You can see sample for demo.txt. So this is how you change the ownership of your files to that particular user. For an example, okay, I want to run my application, by the way. So let's say I wanted to just create a directory. I'll create a directory /app, something like that. So cd/app. All right. Now I'm going to create some files, like let's say project, like let's say project.java file. Okay, so sudo maybe. But okay, so yeah, that's okay. So sudo this one. Now these are all the files coming as a root user, and ls-l of l by the way. So /app by the way is all coming root. I wanted to change. Now I have created all the files, necessary files. Now before starting application, I need to ensure all the files ownerships need to be changed. As an example, so sudo chown, so sample : okay. So which is /app and -R. You already know cp -r, rm -r. So for these commands, it is capital R. Now ls-l. So you can see this is actually coming to the sample, and ls-l of /app, the files inside that also getting the same permissions, by the way. So you apply to the directory, all the files inside that particular one also will get impacted automatically. So this is how you need to do that. Anyhow, practically in the project, by the way, you will see that, why do you need it and all. But if I wanted to change the ownership of the files, then this is the one. And apart from this, we also have something called as, so the other section of this particular one is basically a permission. The first set, by the way, the first character hyphen denotes it's a file. All right. So, but after that, will be 9 characters, by the way. So those 9 characters determines what every user can do on the system, on this particular file. Now the owner, what he can do, he can read and write. And who is the group owner? What he can do, he can only read, by the way. And others, not only this user, not only this group, there are other users, other groups in the system. What those guys can do, it's just the read thing. Okay, so this is how we are going to take care. Okay. So the next one is basically to change these particular things, by the way. So what are these 3 permissions is read, write, execute. Read, write, execute. Now the next one is who are the 3 guys, by the way? File owner, group owner, and others, by the way. File owner is the first one you're seeing on the first sample. And who is the group owner? This is the guy. And there are others as well in the system. Now, if you were to change the permissions, by the way, so then you simply go and try to execute, so sudo chmod. Now I'm using sudo because the files doesn't belong to me, by the way, it belongs to the other user. So I want to do it as an administrator. So that's where chmod. Now user group and other, remove the permissions of rwx. Here there's some shortcuts given, right? So some rwx, ugo, okay, references. UGO, that means users, groups, and others. I'm removing the permission, everything, read, write, execute to the demo.txt. So that means all the permissions is lost, completely empty. You see this. Only I wanted to give the, owner read permission. So sudo chmod u plus what is the read permission. Okay, then demo.txt. That's right. So you want to add permission, you can give the combinations, by the way. So one or all you can give. Plus means adding permission, minus means removing permission. That's it. This is how you can change the permissions of the files. So read for reading the file, write for modifying the file, X for executing the files. Okay. So this is what we have with permissions of the files. Clear? Any questions? Don't see any hands. So the next one, which we have here, is a couple of other topics is also there. Just let's keep it like a miscellaneous commands, or maybe which is not here, by the way. So there are two topics still which is left over. One is, basically like, disk management. The disk management part later I'll tell you. Okay, but rather than the management, let's think about the information, by the way. I wanted to know that, so the system is actually now in the Windows, by the way, you open my computer or my PC, you will say C drive, D drive, like that. Okay, maybe how much used also you can see there, right? Now the same way, okay, if I were to see the information on this particular system, so there's a command called as df. Df will help me. Okay, so this is the one. So it is telling that the different directories is actually having a different partitions. You can see this. These are all different partitions, and mounted to these particular directories. Like mounted means now first party, even Windows also the same concept. Now when you keep a pen drive, it get mounted automatically to some drive name, right? If C drive is only drive you have, you keep a pen drive, you will get a D drive, right? The drive letter is getting associated automatically. Now here is all directories, by the way. So it's mounted to a particular directory. So that's where I was just telling, like, we're not talking about how do we create the mounts and all at this point of time. But rather than that, we're talking about here is, okay, how do you view the information? Df is a command which will help you in understanding, okay, so a partition, how much it is used, by the way. So here it is telling 37% used, the overall disks, by the way. Now the disk is something like, these many blocks is what you're getting, or basically maybe bytes or something. But if for a human, okay, it's better if I go with a human readable format. H stands for human way. So then you're going to get it as, this is a 6 GB. Out of that, 3.8 GB is available, 2.2 is used, is what it is telling. So different mount points, by the way. Now these are also, like I was mentioning, these are all multiple mount points you are getting because of the CIS benchmarking. Otherwise, if CI is not there, okay, you will not get these many things. Okay, that's a simple idea. And so that's what. So that's where, like, how to create this and all, maybe later topic. I mean, we'll get some context later. But for now, we're just viewing the information because it should not, no one should get near to 100%. Okay, the usage should not go to more than 90%, 80%, or especially 90%, because those get fooled, by the way. So things may not start working, or things may not work, by the way. So that is where we will, and so that's where we'll prefer to go with not prefer, I would say, sorry, let me rephrase my words. So that's where, okay, we'll always try to refer this information and always ensure the things are healthy, by the way. So the disk healthiness, you can check, by the way, if it is having enough space to run operating system. Okay, so that's it about the disk thing. Okay. And also you can check all the partitions by using one command called as fdisk, by the way. So fdisk -l also it can show. So here, as a normal user, you don't have the permission. So sudo fdisk-l. So it will just show you what is the main thing. So it is telling you it's a 20 GB hard disk, and it is having 4 major partitions. Okay, and is what it is showing. Okay, 4 partitions. So the disk name is XVDA. Okay, the storage the disk name is XVDA. So, and it is being cut into 4 pieces: XVDA1, XVDA2, XVDA3, XVDA4. Now in Windows, actually, if you actually try to partition your hard disk when you're installing the operating system, like C drive, D drive, E drive, like that, now you're going to see those numbers here, right? So those same numbers here, 4 pieces it is being created. So 3 pieces are for the basics, and the 4th major piece you see here is the major one, because until here is only 1 megabytes, 122 megabytes, okay, 488 megabytes, close to 500 MB use here, or 600 MB, 19.4 GB is being used for the OS operating major one. Okay, so this is the understanding that you are getting. So fdisk-l, some disk is there, and its size and how many pieces it's been cut into. Okay, anyhow, later going forward when we run the applications and all, so you'll not find enough size of the hard disk. You need to increase it. How do you increase it? So without any downtime and things like that, you'll see that. But for now, just viewing the information only. df-h is the one command that I would consider, so start referring it, by the way, to see that disk, and we'll anyhow eventually get onto a scenario that we are going to face a problem of disk. We're going to face a problem of disk fullness and things like that. So how do you refer the information is by using df-h. Okay, that is one thing. So the last but not least, by the way, so the main topic I wanted to talk about here is networking, by the way. So we'll talk about networking now, or basically like, how then view the information about some, about your some network, by the way, in the operating system, and how do you access it from the outside. So we'll talk about it. But just before going there, any questions on this before proceeding, like on the disk thing?
Yeah, hi Raghu.
Yeah.
Are you giving touch and project Java file? That file is not created, but you have given a sudo touch project Java file. The file was created.
So very simple. I don't have permission to create. I'm giving sudo to create. Sudo is for that purpose only.
Permissions. Sudo is to creating a permission. Creating a file for that we need permission.
Yes.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hi, Raghu. My question is like in Windows, when you have a similar volume size, we'll use get-disk to get the volume ID. Similar to that in Linux, what is the command that we use to find out the right volume ID?
Volume ID. I don't know. I'm not a Windows guy, but what do you gain by seeing the referring of volume ID, by the way?
So if we get a request saying that add a specific amount of storage to
Already getting it.
specific drive, we need to add to that particular drive, right?
The
So
first-
the drive is mapped to volume ID at the back end at console level. We want to get the volume ID, how we'll get?
No need here. It's directly the directory. So if they will ask you, if someone asking you which directory is actually supposed to be added,
Correct. If
and
it
that
is
is pointing to the device ID. So
if it is having similar size, like where file it is having 2 GB, right? If it is home is also having a 2 GB, then we need to find out at the volume level, right? Which is the correct volume that we need to increase the storage.
Windows, I don't know, by the way, but here there is no problem at all, right? So here 2 GB is there, but the device ID is different. Here 2 GB is there, but the device ID is different, right? So there is no confusion.
Now we are having only single volume, right? If we are having multiple volumes attached to instance, that's it.
Still same. That is not the reference that you are going to do. You have to do a backtracking, by the way. So, but this is the one final reference. So anyone can ask you this one. So now you do a backtrack, step down, step down, step down. Now this you are doing a backtrack, you will come to know which actually it is going to. So now you are going to go with sudo lvs. Okay, so you will come to know. So this, let's say, volume wall belong to root VG. Now let's say, okay, so then I will go for PVS, by the way. So sudo PVS. So that will tell you, okay, so this actually pointing to this one, and it is actually you found the disk. You have to do a backtracking.
Oh, okay. How can we get the ID of this?
You already got it right.
No.
So you have XVDA. Now you have second hard disk, it will be XVDB, XVDC, like that.
Okay.
I'm not sure in Windows, by the way, but here I don't see
Not
any.
in Windows. For instance, we'll attach multiple volumes, right? That volumes in Linux will mount to specific drives. Okay. The drive, if it is the volume full, will increase the storage at console level. Console level for
Any
the
reference.
specific volume.
That's what, Sunil. I don't see a confusion, by the way. I don't see any problem at all. Which directory mounted to which disk? It's clearly a mapping. Okay. So there is no problem at all. Whatever the problem you're asking, which would never come into picture. So here, this directory is pointing to this particular disk ID. There's a direct relation. There's no in between, by the way. So there is no confusion will come into picture at all.
Oh.
Yeah. So for an example, let's try to get it multi-disk, multi-disk mount DF, something like that. Let's find if any lucky will find out something in the DF output. You see this, by the way. So here, so slash is pointing to SDA3 second partition, third partition. This one pointed to SDA2, but you're asking for multiple disks also, but I'm not sure you can get some example for multiple disks. But there is a direct relation. There is no problem at all. Whatever you're asking is not applicable at all in the first place in Linux, at least. I'm not getting any. Here you see this, by the way. Whatever it is does not matter. Now SDA3 pointing to slash, SDA2 is pointing to some boot, SR0 pointing to something, SR1 pointing to something. This is just a, so CD-ROMs mount, by the way, but still, if you try to understand, there is no problem. There is a direct relation. So whoever asks you, by the way, they'll tell you the disk, which directory to increase, and the directory you go and refer the disk name, and it is very straightforward. There's no confusion at all in Linux. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, Raghu. So, when you said that XDA1, XDA2, these are partitions inside the disk XDA, right? But when you have XDA, XDB, XDC, these are different drives, right?
Correct.
Okay. Like how for example, if we take C drive in Windows, you have a small 400 MB for managing the OS and rest storage, like that. Those are partitions, individual partitions inside the same disk. But
Correct.
when the entire letter changes, like from XDA, it becomes XDB, then those are different drives, right?
Yeah, multi-disk don't compare with Windows, by the way. Windows is little tricky to understand it. So because you go with a partition or you go with a, so separate disk altogether, you get a drive letter in Windows. You will not be
Okay.
able to relate it unless until you go for some disk management utility is there in Windows. Unless until you
Yes.
see that, actually, you will not understand the things. Don't compare from the
Correct.
mount point perspective.
No, no. I mean, I'm just talking about the nomenclature. When we see
Nomenclature
the
also is a confusion in Windows is what I'm telling. So C drive, D drive, there are two drives. By seeing the drive letter, you cannot determine whether those are two different hard disks or a single hard disk with two partitions.
correct.
That's the
Yes.
tricky thing in Windows. Okay, so
Yes. Yes.
not go there. So
Okay.
here, Linux is very simple in that case, at least. So df-h will show you which disk, which directory is mounted. It is actually mounted. It is very straightforward, clean method.
Okay. Yeah. So only in Linux, XDA, XDB, XDC shows different drives altogether.
No, those are not drives, right? XDVA, okay, you're talking about ABC series.
Yes, yes. The ABC after each and everything that you have, instead of XDA 1, 2, those are individual partitions in
Correct.
the drive A, but XDA, XDB, XDC, those are different drives.
Right. You're absolutely right.
Okay. And what is the difference between XDA and SDA? Because in one of the examples that you were showing the images,
Ah.
there in one place it was showing SDA.
Yeah. So it was all the hardware nomenclature, by the way. So when you actually go into the back disk, by the way, so you had parallel hard disks, HDD. Okay, so parallel PATA used to be there. If you go 2 decades back, I'm not sure you have seen the hard disk. So this is the hard disk you look in, like, so the cable also comes with this cable. Okay, these are HDS. Okay, now at that time on this kind of a hardware, if you installed, it is HDA. Okay, so the nomenclature came was HDA, but later actually parallel technology has been overwritten by serial technology. Now serial HDA came into picture. Okay, so which is SATA hard disks. And okay, so SATA, if the hard disk type is a if the hard disk type is a SATA serial model, then it is SDA SATA. Okay, S comes into picture. So that means in the images which we have seen, by the way. So if it is a serial technology, okay, then it is S. It was actually earlier used to be a parallel technology. So that's where it was. It used to be P as well as H, by the way. So S represents this. Now, what is XV, by the way? XV stands for Xen Virtual. Okay. Now the technology what Amazon is actually using for virtualization is now one well-known technology called as VMware. Okay. VMware is well known for creating a virtual machines. But there's
Yes.
also another guy who is there, by the way, which is
Citrix.
Citrix. Okay. It's actually
Oh,
representing they're using Xen Virtual Disk XV. Yeah.
thank you.
All right. Okay. So the next one is going to be the information related to the network, by the way. Okay. So the information related to the network is we're going to talk about two major commands, which is called as okay, one major command, I would say, like, so netstat. Okay, netstat is a command, so which is a command, by the way, which will help you. Your service is associated with certain port number. What is this port number? Okay, how the communications will happen, by the way. So for an example, now yours is a laptop. Okay, you're accessing google.com or I'm accessing miro.com. Now how the things are happening here? So I am actually having a laptop. Okay, so then I have a miro.com, a server, by the way. Let's say single server. There may be many servers. Let's consider it as single server. Okay. Now I'm actually trying to connect to this guy. Okay. So now actually this miro.com actually will translate it some sort of an IP address. Okay. So ping miro.com, if I give, it will just give, okay, so some sort of an IP address. This is an IP address you're getting. Now the same way ping google.com, you're going to get some sort of an IP address. See, end of the day, the name is only given for your reference, but however, it is actually an address, by the way. Okay. This is an address. Now that's how we are actually using an address. To reach our server, we are also using some address. Right? So that's fine. So now end of the day, the address. Now that means my laptop, however the way it found out, the miro.com is actually going into the server. Is actually giving to the server. It is reaching somehow the server. Now when you go to the server is meant for running many services. Server is meant for running many services. You will run many services inside a server. Okay. So that's where, okay, now let's say you understand the network as a courier kind of a thing. You're sending a courier from network packet from one place to another place. Now it reaches to that place. It's a multi-story building, okay, multi-floor building. That means like, so you had to, now not only the address you had to give the flat number also to deliver the packet. Right? If it's an individual home, maybe the packet delivered directly to that home. But let's say it's a multi-floor building. Now you have to precisely tell that, so which floor I had to go in or which flat number I had to deliver. The network also more or less works the same methodology only, okay, or same mindset only. You need to be very precisely telling to reach to the Miro.com, okay, on which floor I had to go in or which service I had to hit in, okay. So in order to enable the contract between the clients and servers, by the way, or OS to OS communication. So I mean, you're thinking server and client, by the way, but it's a machine to machine communication. So now they came up with some concept called as a port number. Okay. So now what is a port number is, so here this Miro.com is actually going to have many services running and it's going to reserve certain port number, by the way. So, and that particular port number, we have to tell from the client that I wanted to reach to that particular port number. But Miro.com, you're not giving any port number by default because it is, okay, your client knows that, so you're not giving anything. It directly takes you and take you to the default port. So what it is doing is, it is taking you to the default ports, by the way. And the default port of the web browser is 80 port. Okay. So 80 port number. Okay. 80 port number is a port number assigned to commonly used internet communication protocol for HTTP protocol. Okay. So we are giving it, a default port. So that's how, your client can reach directly to that one. So no one customize that. Or if Miro is running in a separate port number, so you have to give a separate port number exclusively. Okay. So this is how we are going to deal with communication, by the way. Now this server is actually running on a particular port number to, for the outsiders to communicate, by the way. Now I install some Nginx software, for an example. So how do I find out the list of open ports on my system? Okay, that's where sudo will netstat will come. You can directly run netstat also. But netstat will show many information out of it. I am looking for only the ports which are listening for to Saru. Okay, that is one thing I'm telling. And the next thing I'm telling is, okay, so you get TCP again, Unix ports, and you're getting many UDP ports, you're getting everything. But I'm exclusively looking for the TCP ports, okay, which is the actual communication between server and clients. So the TCP ports. So now you can see this, it opened SSH, it opened HTTP. But I'm not liking these names, by the way. I'm looking for a numbers, okay, LTN, enter. Then listen, TCP, and so now you can see this, it is running on 22 port, it is running on 80 port. Now that's where it is running on 22 port. All the time you open PuTTY, if you have observed, by the way, if you have observed, you would have seen when you open on the right side, there is 22 port number. You're not modifying that. Your server is also running on the same port. You are also accessing the same port, by the way. So default port for that is 22. Now the same way, Nginx also we are running, it's actually opening 80 port. Now how can I say this open Nginx? Now there's also one more relation you can enable, one more column. P will bring a column of process. Okay, so P will bring a column of process, but it will not able to show you. So you simply use sudo, then it can bring you the relation. So sudo. Now you can see this 80 port is actually exclusively running by Nginx. You will come to know which process has opened it. You will come to know. So this is how I am going to okay, so deal with the port numbers what are open on the server. Along with that, there are other ports also which is open. So that means I can hit this particular server over the 80 port. I should be able to reach it. Okay, but I'm not going to get any response, by the way. Why? Because I mean, if it is a normal thing, this like it would have worked, by the way. But here there is some Amazon thing coming into picture. Okay, now here certain Amazon layer coming into picture. So now what is this Amazon? What is this Amazon layer? what is this Amazon layer here is, now you go back to the diagram. Now Amazon is protecting this part. Now this server is within Amazon. Okay. Now that means you're passing to that and you're trying to reach that. But now Amazon is actually protecting each and every server, okay, with a device called as firewall. Okay, there's a devices, by the way. So there is a firewall device, and using this is actually getting protected, by the way. The server is getting protected. And when you create a server, okay, in Amazon, it is automatically creating one firewall for this particular server. So now for this server, come to the security. Okay, so it's allowing only 22 port, by the way, because you're creating a Linux box. For sure, you require to open 22 port. That's why it's opening only 22 port, by the way. Now I would like to allow 80 ports, so to surpass the traffic, by the way. So then here I'm going to go for, so I'm just going back once again. So what I'm doing is I just choose the system, going to the security, clicking on this one, edit inbound rules. Okay, so now 22 is open. So just click on add rule. Now you want, let's say, custom TCP. What is the port I wanted to open? 80 port. And I would like to allow from everywhere. So just click on. Now, since I do this, now I go back here. So since I allowed this, try to refresh, I should be seeing the web page coming from the server. I got it, a web response. This response is actually coming from the server. So now I have to surpass this particular firewall as well. Okay. So now, in order to check what all the ports which is open on the server by using nested-lntp. Now, in order to, okay, so go into the server, going before to the server and check what all the ports are open. So Amazon security group will come into picture, which is a firewall service in Amazon. They protect each and every server with the firewall. Okay, you need to allow as per your requirement. Okay, so this is how we are going to reach the services of the server. We need to ensure the port numbers are open. Right. Now with this particular knowledge, whatever you have learned so far in Linux so far, now we'll be applying this particular knowledge in, so start doing a project, by the way. So that's where tomorrow we're going to start understanding the project requirements. That's where, like I already mentioned in the roadmap of training also. So first we're going to go with the, where is this? So first week we are going to start with the Linux, but just don't keep any fully stop to Linux, by the way. So going forward, we are going to get more and more options discussing in Linux as well. Okay, when the requirements comes in. But at this point of time, so we're staging the things to get onto the project. And this much is needed for me to start with the project. So we're going to start with the project. And this takes some time for us to understand, setup and things like that. Then we'll be going on to the actual automation and all. So tomorrow, what we're going to talk about is how the project will be there generally. More of a theory we'll start with. So, and then we'll start implementing this project maybe in the next week, by the way. We'll also give you a weekend time for you to practice the Linux, because immediately jumping onto the project, hands-on is also difficult for some of you, maybe who doesn't have an experience on Linux so far. Okay. So that is where we will go for a weekend for you to practice the Linux and get some hands-on, right? So with this knowledge, we're going to start with the project. So that's the context for tomorrow. And any questions, please go ahead.
Yes, Raghu. So when you are talking about the networking part here in Linux, so each and every service is associated with a port number, right? If you want to access a particular service in the Linux shell, you need to hit that particular port number from your laptop to access that particular service, correct?
Yes.
So can you like simply tell me what is the difference between process and service? Because there were processes also listed when you did that -L.
So process, okay, may or may not be a service, by the way. For every command you execute, it's going to be creating one process. Okay. And that process may or may not be a service. If it is running 24/7, we call it as a service.
Okay.
Or if it is serving something, we call it as a service.
Okay. So process is just a precursor to a service. To activate a service or to initiate a service, a process begins in the backend, and that initiates or initializes the service, right?
Yeah, you can understand that way. That's fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone? Any other questions?
Yeah, hi. So when we say project starts from next week, right? So from this diagram, right? So while we're doing this project, that is going to cover all of these below, right? Like automation, monitoring, CI/CD, and also we'll take a single project end to end, which lasts for the entire training. And during the process, we are going to cover the other topics. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? Anyone have any questions? Please click on hand and I'll come to know that you have a question. Process will be same every day. So we have few more minutes as well. Let me just pause the recording as well if you want to talk anything offline. We have few minutes. People are not asking anything.